Hi, today we're going to discuss assessment. It's a thorny issue, as the saying goes, weighing the pig doesn't fatten it. We've surely heard of the term assessment, but what does it boil down to? Why should we assess ourselves and others? What is it that we can assess? What types of functions of assessment are there? How do IQ tests work? Are there any alternative forms of assessment? These are the main topics that our discussion sets out to tackle, with a view to shedding light on the nature of assessment. Why assess? Unless teachers assess pupils' attainments in some way, they cannot match learning experiences, whatever is transpiring in the classroom, that is, with students' needs. In other words, teachers cannot tell whether students have made any progress or whether the former need to adjust what they're teaching and how they're teaching it. Research has shown that learning effectiveness is increased by appropriate and informative feedback to pupils and teachers, and that some form of assessment must be part of an effective learning teaching cycle, according to Long and others, of course. By and large, assessment is still relatively informal, as teachers are aware of children's performance from the work they have done. More information about student progress or specific skills can be gathered from a battery of specific tests and formalized types of assessment. Based on these, teachers can make absolute as well as relative judgments about learners' achievements. Nevertheless, Gibbs and others, back in 1983, found that teachers rarely use formal test results, since they believe that the results are needed by other people. At any rate, testing is certainly dominating what goes on in schools, and some teachers would probably agree with what Black and William in 1998 said. Weighing the pig doesn't fatten it. As Long notes, assessment is a major part of the educational process, and without it, teaching would be a rather unfocused activity. The fact remains, however, that a great deal of testing is implemented with only limited justification, according to my own lights. What can we assess? First and foremost, assessment is concerned with attainment, that is, a student's present level of ability or functioning in a particular area. Such abilities can be assessed through a range of tests covering all the main areas of general academic attainments, as well as specific abilities or skills. Some forms of assessment are premised upon the concept that abilities are related to each other. If people score well in one test, then they're likely to score well in others. What enables them to do so is known as general ability or intelligence, and it is assessed by specialized intelligence tests. Nonetheless, the main abilities that teachers focus on are related to the curriculum. More specifically, there are three categories of educational targets or goals that students are called on to attain: knowledge, factual information; skills, how to do things; and understanding, the ability to use information, in other words. It's important to note that even though there's general agreement about the need for such goals, research by Fleming and Chambers in 1983 found that nearly 80% of all questions in school tests dealt only with factual information. It seems that this predilection, this tendency, or penchant, if you like, for factual information is due to the ease of using simple knowledge-based assessments, since tests which incorporate children's use of skills and understanding tend to be time-consuming to design and implement. knowledge. Declarative knowledge can be thought of as a body of concepts with a structure which includes the links between concepts. Concepts can be physical or abstract, or can express relationships and connections. They can also be combined to form factual knowledge in the form of propositions such as a flower's stigma receives pollen, or the word libido was first used by Cicero. This factual information could be assessed by means of such questions as, what do we call the part of the flower that receives pollen, or who was the word libido used by? Modern views of semantic knowledge regard it as a system of connected schemata with variables. Assessment, therefore, focuses on the development of generalized schemata within a subject domain, along with the knowledge of how they function within particular exemplars. For instance, one might be concerned with the development of the concept of a chemical element with generalized notions of the nucleus and electron shell configuration, determining specific valence and reactivity. The general concept could then be related to specific exemplars and tests carried out for knowledge about particular elements showing different bonding properties. Skill. A skill relates to the procedural aspects of how to do things. Normally it refers to a higher level, complex ability made up from a number of other abilities that are connected and coordinated. When someone has a skill, they're supposed to be able to function competently with it at a certain level. Skill performance involves implicit knowledge and is usually generated from the development of more or less conscious abilities. Skills can be assessed by carrying them out, although they're sometimes part of more complex activities. For example, a reading comprehension exercise may involve a range of basic skills, including reading the text and answering the questions that follow it. Understanding. With regard to understanding, we could say that it involves the transfer and use of knowledge in new situations. This is illustrated in the example I'm going to give you. Students have to apply simple mathematical rules. Okay, if Laura and Fred, let's say, both need 2 pencils, and each pencil costs 15 pence, how much money will they need altogether? As regards higher tests of understanding, these involve holistic, real-life tasks where both knowledge and skills are at work. In creative writing, in particular, students may benefit from the generating of ideas and draw on existing knowledge. Aptitude. Aptitude tests, or generally speaking, aptitude assessments, engage with the potential for future attainment. The reading readiness profiles by Thackeray back in 1974, for instance, test a child's visual and auditory discrimination as the basis for progress with reading. However, according to Long, many such tests are only weak predictors unless the ability assessed is a necessary precursor of the target ability. Conversely, the skills of phonological abilities and the knowledge and use of letter sounds are deemed to be the best predictions of initial reading progress. Let's consider the functions of assessment now. All the various forms of assessment fall into 2 major categories of summative assessment, which shows a level of achievement, and formative assessment, which guides learning in the future. Assessment, however, takes a similar form in both cases. In practice, a particular assessment usually has both functions. Summative assessment, the most common forms of assessment involve summarizing levels of achievement. Formal assessments, such as exams, are of great importance to the students involved, since they provide the key to employment or higher education. They're also important to schools since they're being used to evaluate the performance of schools and teachers alike. Tests are a mainstay of what goes on in schools, but this can have a backwash effect in the sense that the content of tests comes to dominate what is taught. It stands to reason that a limited test cannot give a realistic assessment of performance across the whole curriculum. Most formal tests are or try to be selective, focusing on what can easily be assessed in an examination situation. Everyone is aware of this, but teachers are under constant pressure to deliver a curriculum that covers only what it can assess, to the detriment of deeper knowledge and understanding. There's nothing innocuous about assessment. It constitutes a form of evaluation that pupils often use to make judgments about their own competence and, by extension, intelligence. As students go through school, grades and the results of assessments seem to become increasingly important in determining their involvement, as well as their self-image, either positively or negatively. A few words about formative assessment now. Formative assessments are used to help direct or form the educational process for students. One key feature in formative assessment seems to be the role of feedback to pupils. For feedback to be effective, it should focus on details of students' work, giving advice as to which particular areas need remedial work, rather than merely a comparison with other students' work. In a study by Butler in 1988, 48 students were given feedback which took one of three different forms. The first type consisted of detailed comments about the student's performance in relation to criteria set for the specific topic of work. The second type of feedback comprised the students' overall grades, whereas the third type combined grades with detailed comments. The students given the detailed comments showed a 30% improvement, while those who received only grades showed no improvement whatsoever. Interestingly enough, the same holds for those who received both grades and comments. As a revealing gloss on these findings, we could say that apparently any form of evaluative comment tends to distract attention away from informational content and actually decreases learner motivation. Let's consider the types of tests. The two main categories of tests are referred to as criterion referenced and norm referenced tests, and have different functions and rationales. The purpose of a criterion referenced test is to compare each individual's abilities with some form of criterion, whereas the purpose of a norm reference test is to discriminate between individuals or to compare them with one another. We won't dwell on that. I just want to discuss intelligence testing. The notion of general ability or intelligence has been the most important way of explaining away, if you like, individual differences. It's usually assessed by means of measuring performance on a test of different skills using tasks that emphasize reasoning and problem solving in different areas. It can be expressed as an overall IQ test. Early assessments of IQ were premised upon Alfred Binet's research in 1905 as part of an attempt to identify students who needed specialist help. After Binet, many English and American psychologists and educationists interested themselves in IQ tests, and there was a general belief that intelligence was largely inherited and as a result quite stable over a student's school career. There's a wide range of IQ tests purporting to assess verbal and non-verbal intelligence, but will not go into that. Of course, there are other forms of assessment, but okay, I won't talk about that. To recap, assessment plays a major part in the teaching learning process. The assessment of ability involves assessment of knowledge, skills and understanding, although in reality most tests focus on factual recall. As for aptitude tests and assessments, these try to predict future attainments. Summative assessments show the level of students' achievements, whereas formative assessments are used to guide future educational experiences, giving feedback to students and including questions posed by teachers. Formal assessments take two forms: criterion reference tests based on the curriculum and norm reference tests, which enable teachers to assess learners' absolute level of achievement. Other forms of assessments are observational techniques, but we didn't analyse this. So what I would like to receive is your feedback on that, on assessment, and I'll get back to you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.